Today I'm going to be jumping back into a modern setting and I'm going to be banging out what is arguably one of the most iconic bits of scatter terrain for a modern setting. Hey guys, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. I'm going to be building some more post-apocalyptic modern scatter bits here because I need more things to build up my collection for Kill Team. This is a game that I've been interested in and I've only played a couple times. Haven't even finished painting my Kill Team, but I want to play more and I need more things to decorate my table with because the vast majority of my collection is fantasy based. One really quick way to fill up any modern or post-apoc table is with shipping containers. This is a classic bit of terrain. They can be used in all sorts of ways to break up line of sight, stack them, whatever. They're just a really iconic classic project that I've never built before. So today I'm gonna make a couple. I'm gonna be making them out of dollar store foam core. This is the good stuff, not the easy peel stuff. I don't want easy peel. I want well bonded paper. First thing I gotta do is cut a bunch of cubes, well, rectangle cubes, and then I can start decorating them to make them look like shipping containers. I'm gonna make these 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches by 5 inches because my research tells me, and by research I mean checking out what Mel the Terrain Tutor did when he built his, that's a good measurement, so that's what I'm gonna use. I have to figure out a little bit what size I need to cut each piece to accommodate for thickness of foam and the way they overlap, but my final cube's gonna be that size. So let's start some monotonous, repetitive cutting and gluing. I think 6 is enough to kind of fill up an average size Kill Team table along with some other terrain. The scrap piece of foam I had was enough to make 4 of these little 5-inch guys, but I wanted some longer ones that I could have for some variation and to be able to more quickly fill up the space. So I made 2 that were twice as long. These ones are 10 inches long, but still 2.5 by 2.5 the other direction. Now I gotta actually decorate these things to look like shipping containers, and shipping containers tend to have like a corrugated metal on the sides and the top, and then the doors are a different style often that are more flat and maybe have a couple ridges. For the sides and the top, I'm gonna use this corrugated paper. This stuff is absolutely awesome. It's ready to use. Perfect corrugation. I got this on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to grab some. You can get away with making this yourself by peeling cardboard that's the right size, but that's a huge hassle. Why not just use the stuff that's ready to go? So I'm going to put this on the 2 sides and the top. I'm just going to leave the bottoms flat and plain so that they stack nicely. There's no reason to do anything there. And then for the ends, I'm going to use some cereal box food packaging to make up the doors. All right, these things are all sheeted up, and I know what some of you are thinking. Did he just use a glue stick? Damn fool's gone crazy. You can't use a glue stick on crafts this weak. can't use this. Attaching paper to paper. You got a couple options. One, you don't want to use hot glue. It's just too thick, and you just don't want hot glue to attach paper to paper. You can, of course, use PVA. That takes a while to dry. So that leaves you with tacky glue, which is just thicker PVA, and it's thick. It's a little bit tricky to work with. You got to brush it all on, and I had a lot to do. So a glue stick is actually a fantastic option for this. Not any glue stick. I buy these Elmer's X-TREME, and these things are actually very, very good. It's basically tacky glue in stick form. Now, I wouldn't necessarily trust this for things like foam to foam or anything really important that's going to be under a lot of stress, but paper to paper, if you get a good coating of this, it's going to be plenty strong. I've used it lots of times to do kind of corrugation cladding sort of stuff on small items. I've never used it for anything this big, so I'm hoping I don't regret my decision, but I'm feeling pretty confident in it. Before I actually do the different strips that I want to do for the door, I was just thinking about the order in which the different corrugations meet up on these things, and I'm realizing that I want to add the strips all around the rest of it first and then do the doors last. So now I am going to take some of this thinner cereal box style cardboard. This is from Waffles. We eat a lot of waffles in my house. And I'm gonna cut a bunch of narrow strips to clad all of the corners. And I cut a test piece that was visually the size that I wanted. I'm not using a scale here. I just, what looks right? That looks right. Then figure out what the size is. 3/16 of an inch, which is kind of an awkward increment to lay out. I wanna lay out a ton of these and make them exactly the same. I certainly can do it with that, but that is an awkward fractal measurement to lay out a whole bunch of intervals. 3/16 of an inch is basically exactly the same as 5 mm. So I'm going to switch over to metric to lay this out just because it's a number that works well in metric. Speaking of measurements, I get a lot of people who complain about them. I'm Canadian, so I use metric and imperial. We are technically a metric country, but in reality, we use imperial for most building things. And as a carpenter who worked professionally in construction, I worked in imperial 99% of the time. I think in imperial, it is, I don't care what you say, it is a better measurement for construction of things like houses. Even in metric countries, they often switch to imperial standards for wood framing because it makes sense. They're just numbers. So a lot of us know how to use both, and you should too, because then you get in a situation like this where you can just switch to a different method that works better for the purpose. So for this, I'm switching to metric. So let's cut a bunch of 5mm strips and attach them to these shipping containers. Now, while doing this, I tried a few different glues. I tried the glue stick first. It was a failure. There's just not enough surface area on this corrugated paper for it to bond to. I also tried super glue, but that was a royal pain and I gave up on that immediately. So I switched to tacky glue, just brushing it on and going that way. A little bit messy to do, but it worked really well. Now for the door itself, I'm going off of a reference photo here, and I'm gonna try to make them look like they have these bigger panels that are running horizontally. But first I need to put 2 vertical strips of this cladding in to kind of differentiate between the 2 panels of the door. And I want this to be right to the edge of center, and I'm just eyeballing this. You can measure it out, and that's honestly not a bad idea. When doing a lot of like fantasy type builds, a little bit of variation can look just fine, you know, in the stonework and whatnot. But when doing modern stuff, you actually do want a little bit more precision, especially when making something like this that would be manufactured. So it's not a bad idea to spend some extra time marking things out and measuring them if you're not comfortable eyeballing it with enough accuracy. But you know me, that's not how I roll. I left a small gap in between them. Now for the horizontal strips, I cut some bigger pieces that are 3/8 of an inch, so quite a bit wider than these 5mm strips here. Oh, don't you just love the mix of imperial and metric? I can hear every German screaming. I found the best way to do this is to just dab on a little bit of glue onto my piece, place my strip, and then cut off the excess. And because I'm not measuring this out, but I want them to be equally spaced, I'm doing the top and the bottom one first. That way, if there's any discrepancy in my spacing, it can be in the center space and it won't actually look that weird. Looking at my reference photo, these shipping containers always seem to have these little square corner pieces with holes in them. And it would look really nice to add that to these. Cut a whole bunch of little squares, add an extra square piece, maybe drill a hole in it, but they have them on every corner. So for one container, that's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 squares per container. And I got 6 of these. So that's already like 120 of these squares that have to cut and glue on. And after spending a good couple hours doing this, I'm not in the mood. So I'm gonna skip that. One thing I do need though are these pins. These containers always have these pins for locking the door, these kind of rods. I need something for that. The best thing would be small styrene rods, but I don't keep styrene rods. I don't have any. There's nowhere even remotely close to me that sells them. The only place in the city I can think of that would have them is like a 45-minute drive away. Barbecue skewers will be too big. Toothpicks won't look right. I need something. Try something. This might be a super clever solution. Spaghetti. Looks perfect, but I'm not sure how well I can cut this without it exploding. Pretty good. This is definitely a job for super glue. People always ask, what is this stuff that I spray in my videos? Well, I'll tell you, that's why I have an essential equipment page where I list all the stuff I use. This is ACCELERANT, and it's something that everybody using super glue should own. It'll make your life way easier. It's on my page, find a link there. That worked awesome. Spaghetti is obviously a very fragile thing. I wouldn't trust it on most terrain, but it's almost entirely supported by the piece here. It's only in the grooves where it's not, and I think that's gonna be fine. Well, I gotta say, I'm pretty pleased with this. You know what they say about necessity and mothers. Just gotta add these to all of these crates. Maybe I will cut some squares. Maybe if I just put squares on the ends. We'll see. Well, that worked out awesomely. Who would have thought that spaghetti would save the day on my terrain build? I decided not to go and put all the 120 little squares or even a reduced number of them on these. I want to get my Mod Podge on this so that it's ready for paint tomorrow, and I have pretty much run out of time for the day. To get to this point, it's been over 7 hours of work to do this, so I just gotta wrap it up and I gotta cook my family supper, probably spaghetti. So, Mod Podge, then dinner, and tomorrow I'll paint these bad boys out. It's officially day 2 on this project. I ended up staying up pretty late last night getting these primed and ready for paint. I spray painted them with a black primer, and I was actually spray priming in the dark in the middle of the night. So that was fun. I am at a crossroads. I'm at a pivotal decision point on these. I want them to look pretty old and beaten up. So I'm gonna want them to be painted, but I'm gonna want a lot of paint chips and rust on them. And there's 2 approaches I could take to doing this. One method is to paint them out whatever the paint color is gonna be, and then using a sponge to stipple on the paint chips and the rust effects. This is a pretty tricky way to do it. It requires a fair amount of skill and a good artistic eye. The other approach I could take is painting them all out in a rust color and then doing the hairspray or similar coating and then a coat of the paint, and then using a wet brush, start actually chipping away the top layer of paint to reveal the rust beneath it. And I've only done this once before. It's a fairly easy way to go because you literally are chipping away the paint, so it has a pretty realistic look. But there's some definite challenges to doing this method. The timing is really important. If you spray too many of them at once and wait too long to start chipping the paint away, it doesn't come off very easily and you end up removing the rust layer beneath it, and it just doesn't kind of work out. The timing is difficult. So I want to cut out a stencil and then paint on some lettering. I'm concerned that it's just gonna not work out when I try to chip them. Also, I have to do a whole bunch of these, so the timing is really tricky. I'm thinking I'm gonna attempt that method anyway, and if it doesn't work out, I will realize quickly, and then I can just pivot and go on to the stippling technique. Yeah, hopefully that works. Let's get these painted a rusty brown and hope for the best. Really don't know if this is gonna work. I've never done a airbrush stencil before, and this is a pretty tricky place to start with this corrugated texture on this thing. There's gonna be some bleed. There's a few ways you could counteract that by sealing the edges or using spray adhesive, but with the hairspray thing going on, I feel like that might cause me some problems. I'm gonna try to blow this as straight on as possible, not at an angle, because I don't want to get behind the stencil if I can avoid it. Stencil's moving a lot. I'm gonna try reducing my pressure on the airbrush. All right, moment of truth. This could look awful and not very good. I suppose it could be worse, but it could certainly be a lot better. Let's just say I'm really thankful that these particular objects are really forgiving in terms of their paint jobs, because the last couple hours did not go well for me. After my first failed stencil attempt, I tried the paint chipping, and that actually worked really well. The test one was a success, and I was happy with it, and I felt comfortable proceeding to doing the rest. I realized that I had a ton of airbrushing to do, and even after doing the brown kind of rust painting in here, it was just too much to be doing in this space. I wear a mask, so I'm not breathing in all the particulates from the paint, but all that little dust from the airbrush kind of goes in the air and eventually settles on stuff. And because I'm not painting in kind of like a dirty shop, this is a nice finished space where all my finished projects are, all my gaming stuff. I didn't want all that dust settling on everything. I don't have a little spray booth. I will build one eventually. I need to do that really soon. But I don't have one, and I decided I should just set up shop outside. Bit of a pain in the butt, but I took my compressor, airbrush, all my stuff, some paint, outside, set up on my kid's little craft table, and went to town. We got new neighbors that just moved in last week, and if they happen to look out the window and see what I was doing, they're probably very confused about who they moved in next to. Like, what is this weird tattooed guy spray painting little boxes on a tiny table? Anyway, I felt like taking a bit of a risk and painting the base coat color on all of these, just hoping that the paint chipping would work after leaving them for a while. And in retrospect, that was actually an okay decision because it did work on all of them. But my airbrushing, I don't know, I was just in a hurry, not taking my time, and I kind of made every mistake that you can make when airbrushing. I over-thinned my paint and had too much thinner and was spraying too much of it on. And the thing is, when you spray on too much wet, thin paint onto the hairspray, it kind of rehydrates, makes a big mess. It was not good. I didn't take the time to mix things properly and spray lightly. It was just a bit of a disaster. In my frustration, after completing all the base colors, I decided to clean the airbrush because I had been kind of abusing it. Ever since getting my Iwata airbrush, it's been nothing but a dream to work with. It's never really clogged on me. I've taken it apart multiple times. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with. I fully disassembled it and took it apart to clean it out. And because I was just rushing and just not in a good space, when I was putting on the little spray tip, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny little threaded piece, I reefed on it like an idiot and I broke the tip, which is now the second time I've done that on an airbrush. This time, 100% absolutely my fault. I was just being dumb. I couldn't continue on doing the stenciling with an airbrush because I didn't have one that was functioning. What if I just used aerosol spray paint, just like some white spray primer? And this actually might be easier to dust lightly and not bleed through the stencil. When I went to do the paint chipping, turns out, and I kind of knew this in the back of my head, but I was hoping it wouldn't be true. Turns out the rehydration method of water and chipping the paint doesn't work when there's a coating of a non-water-based paint on it. So doing the chipping on the stenciling was very, very difficult. Luckily, I tested that after only doing one, but that is why there's no other stenciling on these pieces, which is a bit of a shame because I think that's one of the things that really makes shipping containers look awesome. But overall, I was not having very good luck with the stencil. My airbrush is broken. Just kind of a disaster. So I'm just gonna leave these as is. All things considered, they still look pretty darn good, and I'm just gonna continue on and get this project wrapped up. The first thing I need to do to make these look right is paint out these metal bars and handles. I don't think they look right just blending in. I'm gonna paint them out with a metallic, and then I'm gonna go through with a little bit of washes and maybe some rust effects, but I'm not gonna go overboard because these actually look pretty decent as is. Well, I say that, but I probably will end up going overboard and just drenching them in the wash. All right, I am calling this project officially complete. Did they turn out perfect? Absolutely not. but they turned out good enough, and quite frankly, these are gonna look just fine on my table for a game of Kill Team or whatever. There was a lot of challenges during this project, and I hope you enjoyed seeing them. You know, it'd be really easy for me to just build all these, fumble through it, record a perfect version of it for a tutorial. I'm just not interested in doing that sort of thing anymore. I think there's a lot more value in showing the real struggles of a crafter. I know it can be super discouraging if you see makers on YouTube build things and it just goes perfectly, and then you try it for yourself, you break something, you spill something, you make a mess, something doesn't work, it looks bad, and it can be really discouraging when you think that, oh man, you must suck and all these other people do it perfectly. But the reality is nobody does it perfectly. It's always a struggle and there's always problems. So I've been really enjoying sharing those with you. I've been enjoying this kind of new format of more storytelling vlog versus perfect tutorial. So I hope you enjoy that as well. If you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button and let me know in the comment section below. That stuff really helps the videos gain traction on the platform. If you want to pick up any tools or supplies to do this stuff for yourself, check out my essential equipment page on blackmagicraft.ca. I have links to most of the stuff that I use regularly. That way you get the exact thing that you need. There'll be little descriptors as to what everything is and why I use it. Purchasing through those links actually helps fund the production of videos like this because they are Amazon affiliate links, and every time you purchase something after clicking on one of those, I get a commission, and that goes into making these videos. If you really like what I do, you get a lot of value out of these videos, I highly encourage you to consider supporting Blackmagic Craft on Patreon. That support is crucial to allowing me to spend so much time doing this because it does take a lot of time. If you join up, there's some cool rewards like a private Facebook group and a private Discord server where I am fairly active, and it's full of other great, awesome crafters who are there to help you on your crafting journey. So think about it. It would mean a lot to me if you did. That's it for this week, guys. Cheers. I will see you again next week.